I'm Jedi Lion, former Bluesky artist, worked on Nimona under Disney, and former Laika artist most recently, where I worked on Wildwood, which comes out October 23rd this year. Today, in Life's Pursuits, I'm going to be talking about all the advice I've shared with people in myriad industries over the past decade regarding networking that has been effective for them, effective for me. A little bit about personal experiences around that related to getting into the industry and my journey through the industry. So, invite you to stick around. There will be more than just this one class about this. So, if there's ideas about networking that you'd like to hear about, put them in the chat. Might be able to cover them today, might also be able to cover them next time. My number one piece of advice, and this is something you should always remember, is nameur saenggak, which is Korean for think about others. Care. That's the main feedback that I have regarding networking. Care about others. That is what networking should be. It shouldn't be hand out your cards to a million people. That can be effective in some manner, but true networking is about interconnection. So I will be talking about interconnection and how it relates to not only life in the industry of animation, but life in general. And so hope that you'll find this useful. There have been hundreds of people I've shared these ideas with over the past decade, as I said, and each one of them has expressed that it was a unique and unexpected uh, way of looking at things. So I'll be pulling from a lot of experiences of my own, but also hopefully some experiences from some other people. So after the idea of care, which I'll probably reiterate a lot tonight, the number two thing is to recognize we are not an island. We do not exist alone. We need other people. You and I, we are born that require two people. So there's at least three people involved in our being here, whether they're still with us or not. Whether we know who they are or not. As a baby, we weren't able to feed ourselves. We didn't have a pack of wolves raise us. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't know English, which you wouldn't be able to understand me if you didn't know English, which you also learned from people around you. And so, one of the things that I've come across most commonly when I talk with people that have mentored students, with colleagues, is this concept of basically childhood, my do it. I need to be the one that does it. It's me. And with that, we fail or we succeed and we see it as just me. But the idea that I can even speak today is because of hundreds, if not thousands, of other people over the years that I've heard and learned from. I will express a bit more of my own experience again with networking and how that led me into the animation industry along the route that I've gone and the impact it's had to care about the people around me. But I'd like to start with something a bit more fun. During my college years, I didn't have the same perspective I have today. Early on, I came across this video and I wanted to share it today. So let's see, this is the first time I think that I'm going to share audio from the desktop. So let me know if you can hear this.
I'm not very good at singing songs, but here's.
All right, sounds like it's a little loud. Yeah, so this is Carl Sagan. So I watched this video. It was during a time when auto tuning was all the rage. And so a lot of people were going on taking snippets of people's commercials and cartoons and stuff and just auto tuning whatever the words were. It's a little less capable than what AI is today, but I thought it was hilarious, but also deeply impactful. So Carl Sagan, he had a long-running segment about science. He was a well-renowned astronomer and educator. And so this comes from his TV show that he ran. I'm going to stop it pretty early on. There it is. If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. There have been many a person that I've interacted with over the years, including myself, who, when presented with somebody who already had been down the line, mentor of theirs, my teachers, etc., we consider that we need to be able to do it, and don't consider that the fact, I'm streaming today, the fact that I'm using a computer to create things geometrically, to create the worlds that are in the films that I'm working on, has been built on a number of people. If I truly want to do it myself, how much abstraction am I going to go from my goal? Am I going to go to, I need to program? I need to make Maya myself. I need to make Photoshop myself. In order for me to do it myself, I really need to create that myself. Is it the brush? I need to make the brush myself, because then it's mine. I did it. Do I need to come up with the concept? The idea that there's binary, that there's electrons being held in space and charges being held, and they have and or gates that allow us to create letters and these pictures that we're seeing today. How far abstraction do I need to go? Do I need to go back to like, I invent electricity? I need to like discover electricity and harness it myself. And so a lot of what I'll be sharing about networking comes from this idea. There are people around us who have information that we don't have, and they're willing to share it. And not everybody is, but a lot of people are. And if people who have done something you're interested in have gone by before you, say you have somebody that you really respect in the animation industry or in finance or in whatever industry it be, if they give you advice, it's worth considering what they have to say and not feeling like you're cheating or cheating your education because you didn't reinvent algebra to solve this problem. You're using the tips and tricks that were built before. A lot of students are afraid to reach out to people in the animation industry. A lot of students think that nobody's approachable. Being in the animation industry, I can tell you that I have many of a time talked with my colleagues about how frustrating it is when you get reached out to by somebody and then you respond and they never say anything back. You try to give them some help or offer that you can meet with them or reach out whenever you like, and nobody ever does that. I say nobody, but it's maybe 1 in 100 people do that. Not everybody wants to be reached out to, but there are a lot of people in the animation industry, like me, who have gone through this largely alone, in that they didn't grow up with any concept of what the animation industry entailed. They didn't grow up understanding that 3D was the world that they're going into. Whenever I was going to, I was trying to get into animation originally, I had watched anime, I watched cartoons, I watched movies like The Lion King, and I wanted to do that. I understood roughly that you draw. That's one of the things you do. I didn't really know how you can get into the industry, and so whenever I had a brother who went off to college, learned about Brigham Young University having a really respected animation program that won like Student Academy Award and Student Emmys, and he told me about that. So suddenly I was like, okay, well, BYU, that's a place I can go. And so whenever I decided that I was really going to try for animation, that's what I went for. I went for BYU. I applied nowhere else. I needed to get into the university first, and then I needed to get into the animation program separately. And that was a a thing that I also didn't really what I needed to do. I was able to talk with somebody about how you have to establish that you're a pre-major, to take these 3 classes, and then you had to apply in May or something. And so as I talked with people, I learned about that a little bit. And so I took the classes and I got rejected, which I wasn't shocked by because I had only really been drawing for a little bit. And I had been like self teaching myself gesture drawing, and I bought like the animator survival kit or some book like that. And I was just like trying to animate things here and there. I didn't really know what I should be doing to get into the program. And then over the summer, after I was rejected, I was talking with some friends. They were going to meet up with somebody, and I couldn't make it. It was somebody who had just gotten into the animation program, going to help some of the pre-majors get in by giving feedback and direction on what the professors are looking for and things like that. BYU accepted like 25 students a year at the time and would maybe have 200 to 300 students apply every year. And so that's very low odds in terms of just odds. But he had been told the year before he was number 26. So he was rejected the year before, but he was just barely rejected. And he spent that year working his butt off to make sure he wouldn't be rejected the next. He wasn't. I didn't get to meet him in that situation, but I got to meet him in the hallway sometime. And he mentioned that he was interested in taking some programming. He was taking the first introduction programming class at BYU. I had taken it previously, and I have some experience coding, not a lot, but has some. And so I offered that I could tutor him because he seemed to think that he wouldn't be capable of handling it. And so when the classes were coming and the assignments were coming, sure enough, he reached out to me, and I helped him with his programming homework. He offered to give me pizza. I didn't request that, but he offered to give me pizza. And then he offered, knowing that I had been rejected for the animation program and I wanted to get in, to teach me. And so each time that I went and taught him tutoring for programming, he taught me drawing. He taught me how to present my drawings better, how to clean it up in Photoshop, what the professors are looking for. Things like they don't want an empty sketchbook. They want one that's completely full. That rates higher than one that, even if it's the same number of pages that were full, if there's 300 more pages that weren't full, they look more low on that. And so he kind of guided me on this. And then whenever it came to the fall, he told me his class schedule for his first year in the program. And he said, just show up to these classes at these times. And just if somebody asks, tell them you're a pre-major and you wanna learn. So I did. I went to those 4 classes, and day one, I got ejected from 2 of those classes. They asked, you're not on the roll. What are you doing here? I said, oh, I'm pre-major. I'm interested. They said, get out. One of the 3rd class, the teacher didn't ask quite the same question, and I honestly shared my answer, and then I kept going for 4 weeks. At some point, couldn't do the homework because you needed to be signed up for something. He was like, wait, aren't you in the class? I said, oh no, I didn't get an ad code. And I was like, you need to leave. But in the 4th class, it was run by the guy who founded the animation program at BYU. And his name was Brent Adams. He was one of the founders. And he asked everybody seated, he said, I have 30 seats here. 23 people are enrolled. Every seat's full. Everybody who's here who does not belong in this class, I want you to stand up and tell me why you're here. So I got up and I told my bit that I'm here, I want to learn, that it got rejected, but my 3D is definitely more advanced than my 2D, and I just want to keep learning. And he allowed all of us to stay in the class. And in that class, the TA for that class was the student who had been helping me over the summer. And he made sure that every time we were doing reviews, that we had put up on a screen all of the assignments for everybody as a thumbnail, just all on one screen. And we just picked 3 out of them, which ones to look at. And mine got selected every week, and every week that TA, after the professor would say something positive about me, he would indicate, go pre-major. That's wonderful. That's great. Pre-major. He made sure that the professor knew that I was a pre-major that wasn't in the program. And so largely I can attribute a lot of how I got into the animation program at BYU and thus into the animation field to that one man who I offered without any expectation of reciprocity to help because I saw a need and I tried to fill it. Networking is largely about the interconnection of humans, about people. They, like you and me, have desires and needs. And so if we spend our time trying to support them towards their desires and needs, that will be positive. Generally, it'll be received positively, like with this TA. But it's not just with TA; it's with so many other people. As I was preparing for what I was going to say today, I made a list of about 40 different experiences I've had where me just offering to serve somebody in a way that I saw would help them led to a great outcome for me. Next part about networking I want to say with that is help your neighbor. So in that class, not only was I, getting the shout out from the TA, I spent all my time studying. I was in the lab 18 hours a day, sleep in the lab every other night, and I was watching tutorials all the time. So when I heard somebody else struggling with something, I'd go over and see if I could help. A lot of times I was. And that came out whenever we were doing reviews. The professor would ask, hey, how did you do XYZ? Be like, Jedi. Jedi did that. That was great. By midway through the semester, the professor, when he heard my name being said in the class or go pre-major from the TA, he would indicate under his breath, see if you don't get it next time. I did get in the next time. And I've continued to try to just serve and help others. And that's how actually I got into procedural modeling as well. I started out, I was working, or I wanted to help out on the film. And so I asked what they needed. I started off with some effects that they were doing, and then they had somebody decide they were actually going to do the effects. So I got off that. And then they're like, we need trees. We need like these heavily stylized trees. So how about you work on that? Go sit in on the Houdini class for a couple days, and then you can work on making some trees in Houdini. So I did, and that's how I got into procedural modeling. That's how I eventually became one of the first procedural modelers that was their job. Whenever I went to Bluesky Studios, I was told that I was the first person hired as a procedural modeler at Bluesky Studios. At that time, there were no tutorials. At that time, YouTube existed, but not in the way it exists today. And so I couldn't ask people, couldn't go just watch somebody just showing me how to do what I was trying to accomplish. Nowadays, there's a lot of stuff out there, which is why my course about procedural modeling that I teach after this is largely not about the technical side, because you can learn the technical side from anywhere. More about the foundational elements, the principles, kind of like what I'm sharing right now, trying to share through experience this idea of how to network, how to think about networking, how to think of like I don't think of it as networking until just recently. I didn't even consider the two in the same. These were just my friends. I'm trying to be friend people, trying to reduce their suffering. I was trying to reduce the suffering of the students that I was helping with teaching teaching over the past decade. I was trying to reduce the suffering of the students who were making that film that I started doing procedural modeling on. Went where they asked me to go, and I made really good connections, which ended up paying off. That same guy who was the TA, he went off to Bluesky Studios before me, and I was able to talk with him about how I could maybe focus on getting into studios. Now, I've shared a majority of that story. There's more to share, but I'd like to see if there's any questions that anybody has regarding networking so I can guide what I might move into next. Shooting stars out your fingers. I will try. Not sure how I can do that. In case, I'm just going to move on then to what I had in mind next. Oh, there's a question. Is there a better time to ask for questions? Ask whom for questions? The animators. You mean, so is there a better time to ask like other professionals, like to reach out to them? Not sure I understand your question. So I'm assume that it's like, is there specific situations or times of year or something like that that might be useful or better to reach out. So there is a little bit of a cycle that happens. If you know a movie is coming out for Pixar, for example, a lot of people at Pixar are going to be crazy busy. If you know internships are coming up, the recruiters are going to be crazy busy. So those are some times to maybe avoid because the artists will be in crunch time and the recruiters will be in crunch time during kind of those seasons. There's kind of a hiring cycle that largely has historically been around April, May time. So again, recruiters generally going to be busy. But there's also a lot of networking events that happen more in the fall, like SIGGRAPH and CTN and Lightbox. And so those are great times to kind of reach out because that's what they're already looking to be doing. How to keep up a connection. I believe I'm very good at reaching out, but not maintaining. Okay. Yeah. So it's a great question. How to keep up a connection. For those of you in Mexico who were there for my conference talk, the answer you will find is repeated. Just do it. That's the way. Care about them. How do you care for friends? You know, they're not necessarily your friends, so don't get so cordial with them and so expecting of them, maybe. But if you know them and you're Facebook friends with them, for example, or LinkedIn, they like post that they got a new job, congratulate them. If you see they're looking for work, I was unemployed for a while. I understood how painful it was to be unemployed, and the general idea behind networking is try to remove others' burden, try to be a help, try to aid them in what they're trying to accomplish, learn what they're trying to accomplish. And so I was unemployed for a while, and then I saw that a friend of mine who was looking to become a director of animation was looking for opportunities in that. He had just gotten laid off. And I heard about that. So I spent 3 hours just scouring the internet to see what I could find. And I sent him 10 suggestions. And one of them turned into something where he actually started chatting. So try to be a service. If you go to an event that they're going to be at, or you think like the recruiter might be there, you can reach out, say, hey, I'm going to this event. Will you be there? Be mindful not to take too much of their time unless you're really close with them. But even then, with friends, you generally aren't going to take 6 hours of their time. So, yeah, reach out. It's their birthday. You know it's their birthday. Say happy birthday. It's Christmas. It's Hanukkah. It's Canada Day. It's Chuseok. Reach out. Say hey, happy Chuseok. I hope you and yours are great. And then if it's something like a recruiter or a mentor, most people I've interacted with in the industry have explicitly stated how often you can reach out. I have often told students and mentees, if you have a problem for 15 minutes, you can reach out. Like you can email me. So if that's what the person has told you, great. If they haven't told you anything, then I'd stick with more cordial times of like Happy New Year. Or if they were mentoring you or they're a recruiter, if you have an update, maybe you did something that they told you you should do. Show them. Spend the time to return and report and let them know that they had an impact in your life. Those are all great times. And then if you need help, nothing too massive probably, but like when I was unemployed, I reached out to the people in my network. I just said, hey, do you know of any jobs in this field? I'm looking to do this. And I ended up getting my first interview because one of the guys I had met years before and turned into becoming the head of the department at Netflix. And he was like, hey, yeah, I know about these opportunities. And he just directly reached out to the hiring manager, directly reached out to the recruiter, and within a day, I heard back from them about an interview, my first interview in 6 months. So, yeah, if you think something's really cool and it's related to something you talked about, they shared some concepts about apple pie, and you're like, man, have you seen this apple pie? Those are all great times. They're humans. I'll talk about more of that in the future and kind of the exact advice I've given to students going to uh, networking events like Lightbox in the next class because we got to end for now. And I need to take a short break. So I'll be back in a couple minutes. Yep, and you can post other chat questions if you have them. See what I can do when I get back.